I see you out there, you perverts. I see every last one of you. You know what my most viewed video is right now? It's the Marquise de Sade book review for 120 Days of Sodom. That's right. Everybody comes here, mostly, for the torture and the torture erotic pornography. The erotic torture. That's closer. And the industry drama, okay? I'm not gonna lie, you all like the torture of the industry drama. And so to make you happy, and so today we're talking about the story of the eye. We'll see if you thank me for it later. Enjoy. You filthy perverts. Hello, my name is Ian Kirkpatrick, and welcome to the book review. Today's book would be Story of the Eye by Georgia Bataille. Georgia Bataille. Georgia Bataille. Now, it is described as erotic fiction. In reading it, I would not describe it as erotic fiction, just as I would not describe the Marquise de Sade as erotic fiction, even though it is sexually explicit fiction. I discovered Bataille when I was getting 120 Days of Sodom by the Marquise de Sade. This appeared in the recommended, and it was called a cross between Nietzsche and the Marquise. And so I was like, well, that sounds interesting. How about we take a look at that? This book was originally published in French in 1928 and then published in English in 1978. Before we get started, I would like to warn you that this is some very adult content, and if you're sensitive to adult content, this is just very adult content, okay? So the story of the eye is actually a novella. It's not a full novel. It's only about 130 pages. There's short pages, big margins on the side. Technically, it's not a long read, but it took me longer than it should have to read what I did. The story of the eye consists of several vignettes centered around the sexual passion existing between the unnamed late adolescent male narrator and Simone, his primary female partner. Within this episodic narrative, two secondary characters emerge: Marcel, a mentally ill 16-year-old girl who comes to a sad end, and Lord Edmund, a voyeuristic English émergé aristocrat. Simone and the narrator first consummate their lust on a beach near their home and involve Marcel within their activities. The couple are exhibitionists, copulating within Simone's house in full view of her mother. During the second episode, Simone derives pleasure from inserting hard and soft-boiled eggs. During the second vignette, Simone derives pleasure from inserting hard and soft-boiled eggs for her vaginal and anal stimulation. She also experiences considerable enjoyment from the viscosity of various liquids after the shells break. The pair undertake an orgy with other adolescents, which involves some broken glass and involuntary bloodletting, and ends with Marcel's psychological breakdown. The narrator flees from his parents' home, taking a pistol from the office of his forbidden, senile, and violent father. They view Marcel within a sanatorium, but fail to break her out. Naked, they flee during the night back to Simone. Naked. It should be noted that when these two go to meet Marcel when Simone and the narrator go to see Marcel at the sanatorium, they decide it's a good idea to just strip off their clothes before they go in and then to walk around naked, because Why not? And also, they just like the feel of the air on their naked bodies. So naked, and then they get caught trying to, well, then they get chased out trying to meet Marcel. Naked, they flee during the night back to Simone's home, and more displays of exhibitionist sex ensue before Simone's widowed mother. Later, they finally break Marcel out of the institution, but unfortunately, Marcel is totally insane. Deprived of her therapeutic environment, she hangs herself. After Marcel's suicide, the two flee to Spain, where they meet Sir Edmund. They witness a Madrid bullfight, which involves the prowess of a handsome 20-year-old matador, El Granero. Initially, El Granero kills the first bull that he encounters, and the animal is consequently castrated. Simone then pleasures herself by vaginally inserting these Turin testicles. Unfortunately, El Granero is killed by the next bull that he fights, and his face is mutilated. Absolutely destroyed. As the corpse of El Granero is removed from the stadium, his right eye has worked loose from its socket and is hanging out, bloody and distended. Simone, Sir Edmund, and the narrator visit the Catholic Church of San Seville after the day's events. Simone aggressively seduces Don Eminando, a handsome young Catholic priest, fellatiing him while she and the narrator have sex. Sir Edmund undertakes a blasphemous parody of a Catholic Eucharist involving desecration of the bread and wine using the priest Aminado's urine and semen before Simone strangles the priest to death during his final orgasm. The trio successfully elude apprehension in the murder of priest Don Aminado and make their way down Andalusia. Sir Edmund purchases an African-staffed yacht so they can continue their debaucheries, whereupon the story ends. In the postscript, Bataille reveals that the character of Marcel may have been partially inspired by his own mother, who suffered from bipolar disorder, while the narrator's father is also modeled after his own paternal relationship. So I'm going to be honest, I was not able to finish this book because I really just did not care about it. Originally, what drew me to this book was a comparison to the Marquise de Sade, because despite the intensity of the content in 120 Days of Sodom, it was the narrator and the narrative voice itself that made the Marquise so interesting and kind of funny. He was charming, even if he was disturbing. Okay, when he wasn't being completely disgusting with the actions going on in the book, his narration could drop jokes and could drop humor and could be playful, and that was what made him fun. Also, the insight into his philosophies and his libertinage, because he was very straightforward about why he was a libertine and what that meant, and that's one of the reasons he wrote the way he did. That's what made the stories so interesting. And so Nietzsche is also a philosopher and has his own direction in which to come in. So then when it mentioned Nietzsche and de Sade, I thought that, it would be disturbing, but it would also have more thought put into it. And that's not to say that the story of the Eye doesn't have thought put into it, but it is a very cut and dry story where it's the vignettes and the space is used very efficiently. There's really not a lot of excess information put anywhere. There's not a lot of internal monologuing, and there's not really exposition. It just moves from place to place to place where you see the story continue and you see the actions being taken between the characters. So it moves quickly in that sense, but because the characters are so just disturbing, obviously, look at that summary. Just because the story itself and the characters are not really likable and you kind of just see them stalking Marcel into insanity until she kills herself, there's nothing that necessarily drew me in, because I didn't really get Bastal's point of view, which is what made de Sade so interesting, is having his point of view. Instead, I just kind of got this vision of this disturbing story, which really anybody can do if they just set out to be disturbing, and so there wasn't anything unique for me. And because the story is so short, I made it probably 2/3 of the way through. I'd finished up to where Marcel killed herself, and then I read a little bit past that, and then I just was like, do I really want to finish reading this? Am I getting anything out of how far I am? I mean, I probably could have pushed through and just finished the remainder of it, But when I'm reading a book that I don't really like, or I'm just not into, I can end up carrying around the shortest book for like a month. So I kind of just gave up on it to get to something that I did enjoy. Now, like Desaad, this has obviously sexual content and extremely graphical sexual content because of the insertion of items into the vagina and so much sex, really. There's at least a one sexual scene in each chapter. But I would not label this as pornography or erotica because of the portrayals of sex. It seems more like it's there for a symbolism of some kind or just to be disturbing, but not necessarily, but it's not there necessarily in the same way that sex is put in a story to be enjoyable, if you know what I mean. It's the same with Desaad, where the sex isn't really in there in order to eroticize, but it's more there in order to be violent and to use violent sex. And there is a strength and a symbolism in combining the thing that's supposed to be the most spiritual experience you can have with another person, something that combines, a moment that is to combine two souls, and a moment of unity, with something as despicable as violence. There's a higher meaning and a higher purpose to doing that. And I think more than anything, that's really why sex is in here. It's to degrade the union. I'm brought to believe that even more since, in that last third of the story, you've got the desecration of the Catholic Church. You've got the desecration of the Eucharist. You've got the disrespect for the Catholic priest. You've got the eventual murdering of the Catholic priest. And it's all a symbol of hating religion, and specifically hating the Christian religion or the Christian God. We can argue about all of the different denominations, whatever, but at the end of the day, the Catholic Church worships the Christian God along with the other Christian denominations, and this church was picked specifically. So really, instead of trying to be sexy or trying to turn anybody on, it was there to desecrate the meaning of life, the meaning of love, the meaning of that moment together when two souls become one. And that's really what it is, because it is one of the most despicable things that somebody can really do, is to mix life and death, love and murder together. And I think that's really what came out in this story. Tell me, have you read The Story of the Eye? If you're interested in reading The Story of the Eye, there is a link in the description down below to where you can find it. Let me know if you have read it, what your thoughts are on it, if you haven't read it, and if you have any thoughts on it now, and if you have any suggestions for me to read in the future. Until I see you next time, bye-bye.